I've got my picks, pre-playoff picks for who I think's going to advance in each section, and who I think the spoilers will be if the circumstances materialize that way. So, without further ado, let me get into it. I have for Section 1, AA, Rochester Century. Based on their record, 17-3-1. I think it's hard to pick against them. The next best record in that section is Lakeville North at 11-9-1. I think there's just too big of a gap there. Obviously, anything can happen in the playoffs. I mean, I've watched enough high school hockey to know that, crazy stuff happens in the playoffs, and often teams rise up, and prove a lot of people wrong. But I'm going with Rochester Century, 1 AA. 2 AA, I'm going with Minnetonka. I've seen them a few times this year, and they're hell on wheels. They're crisp, they're precise. Technically, they're great. They're excellent. And their arena is second to none. Not that that has anything to do with anything, but if you haven't been to that Pagel Activity Center, man, make sure you get out there. That place is sick. But yeah, Minnetonka, they're great. I'm picking them, but don't sleep on Holy Family. I mean, their record's damn near the same. 17-3-1 compared to 17-2-2. Do not sleep on Holy Family. They're pretty good year after year. I mean, they have their coach and just that entire community. They've built a tradition of excellence, over the past few years, and they're consistently showing that they're good, that they're at the cream of the crop, and they're a force to be reckoned with. So, anyways, I'm going with Rochester Century 1A, Section 2, Minnetonka. Section 3, I'm going with St. Thomas Academy. Seen them a few times this year. They look good, but a little rough around the edges. And then I find that a little alarming because I've seen the Edinas, I've seen the Minnetonkas, I've seen the Duluth East this year. And those teams look as sharp as ever. So it's a little scary to me to see St. Thomas Academy look a little rough around the edges, But they're definitely good enough to, make it out of their section on top. But they have Eastview nipping at their heels, right on their tail. 17-4-0 record, legit record. So don't sleep on Eastview, but I'm picking St. Thomas Academy, Section 3, Section 4, White Bear Lake, 15-3-2. I'm picking Tartan as the spoiler there, 14-5-1 record. Tartan surprisingly good this year. White Bear Lake has a record of 15-3-2. Section 5, I'm going with Centennial. Seen them 2 or 3 times this year, and they were, I was impressed every time I saw them. They've been struggling a little bit as of late against the heavy hitters in Minnesota high school hockey. But, I think they're legit, They have a lot of talent, a lot of youth. But they're fun to watch, and they have a good system down. I'm going to pick Centennial, Section 5, 12-6-3 record. Champlin Park is a sleeper with 13-6-2 record, but I really haven't heard squat about Champlin Park, so I just got to kind of throw them to the wayside and just focus on Centennial, Section 5. Section 6, you got the Edina Hornets, right? They're like the New York Yankees of professional baseball. They're like the New England Patriots of professional football. These guys are, King Kong of Minnesota high school hockey. I mean, what they do better than anything is know how to win. Might not always be pretty, but they know how to win. They know how to get the job done. I was actually just at a game a week ago maybe where they played Centennial, and they were down 2-0, and they battled back and won 3-2. And that's exactly what they do. If they go down 2-0, their spirits aren't broken. They're not discouraged, So these other teams, they make the mistake of taking their foot off the pedal, thinking they got them beat. And I saw it in that game, and Edina just chipped away and came back and ultimately reigned supreme. And that's what winners do. That's what champions do. And we've seen over the years that Edina is the cream of the crop. I mean, they're as good as you can get. Their coach, he's just a wizard. He's a genius. And those kids, there's a lot of talent in the same room. They know how to play together really well, and they put everything together and execute. I'm picking Edina. The record is 21-1-0, but don't sleep on Cretin. The record of 18-3-1. They're surprisingly good this year. Section 7, man, Duluth East. I'm over the moon about these kids. I've seen them a few times, and there's just something different There's something different about these damn kids, man. There's something in the water on the North Shore, because these kids are like, when you see these kids, you know, you're almost convinced that they've been like, you know, molded and materialized and engineered in like an underground laboratory, you know, of excellence or perfection, and then brought to earth. You know what I mean? It's just crazy to watch these kids because they operate with an intensity and at a level that is so hard to come by. Rarely seen. I've been at a few games of theirs this season when they were up 4-5-0, and they're playing just as hard. They're playing in a 5-0 game as though it's a 1-1 tie with 10 seconds left in a state championship game. That's the mentality. Every one of those kids on that bench and in that room has. And every shift is played with the utmost urgency. They're sharks on blood. They're killers. They're not out to win. They're out to rip your head off and bury you. You know what I mean? And it's just, it really is. It's amazing to watch. Funnest team to watch I've seen thus far. As good technically as Edina, St. Thomas Academy, you know, Minnetonka, those guys are, there's something different about Duluth East. So I'm picking them out of Section 7, but don't sleep on Cloquet-Esko-Carlton, because that's a team that's beat Duluth East just last night, as a matter of fact, and tied them early in the season. And a good, respectable record of 16-6-1. So don't sleep on Cloquet-Esko-Carlton. It's going to be a battle between Duluth East and Cloquet coming out of Section 7. But I'm still going to go with Duluth East there. In Section 8, I don't know much about these teams, but I'm taking Moorhead. I'm taking Moorhead to take that one, even though Moorhead and Brainerd basically have the same identical records, 17-6 versus 17-5. I'm going with Moorhead because they came up just short in the state championship game last year. They still now have the big game experience, and they have some kids that returned from last season, and they've had some impressive wins this season, including a win over Centennial on Hockey Day, Minnesota. So I'm going with Moorhead, Section 8. But Brainerd could be the stealer there. So again, guys, Section 1, Rochester Century, Section 2, Minnetonka, Section 3, St. Thomas Academy, Section 4, White Bear Lake, Section 5, Centennial, Section 6, Edina, Section 7, Duluth East, Section 8, Moorhead. Let me know what you guys think.